السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to go ahead and begin bi'idhnillah. We'll give everyone a minute to make it in first. Oh, the brother was asking me about, I didn't get a chance to respond yet, about the dates of the next session, which is Bab al-Qada, inshallah ta'ala. At the moment, I'm looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of August, inshallah ta'ala. So I'll be around then, bi'idhnillah. Tamam. Okay. So in our last class, we said we're going to skip these furu' inshallah ta'ala, and we're going to go starting bismillah, this segment right here. وَلَوْ تَدَاعِيَ inshallah ta'ala. So we're going to begin from there. Open up in my book first. Oh no, this actually might be, that's the wrong one. I think I was speaking about the farra. Yeah, one second. Bismillah. Yep, that's, there we go. Oh, mumtaz. Yep, we're going to start from right here, inshallah ta'ala. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. So now we're going to be speaking about some of the details of the claims that are made and how they are looked at. The author says ولا تسمع دعوة داء مفلس ثبت فلسه أنه وجد مال, and we covered that in our last class. We're going to the next sentence where he says وَفِي الدَّعْوَى بِعَيْنٍ, that means someone is claiming that something was taken from them. عين means something physical. He says تنضبط بالصفات, that can be described and has certain, we can assign a proper description of these actual items. كحبوب, like grains, وحيوان, like an animal. You need to, when you are making that claim, to present ذكر صفة بأن يصفها المدعي بصفات سلم. In salam is a type of transaction that happens between two parties. An agreement is made on how much, but the delivery of the item that's being purchased is delayed. That's salam. Now, in order for salam to work, though, the person, the buyer, needs to be informed of a detailed description of the product. Tamam? That way, once the product is brought to him, if it does not meet that description, those details, he has a right to refuse or to reject the transaction and return it. Tamam? So in order for salam to work, the description needs to be accurate. So if you're describing something that was taken from you, you need to describe it in the same way you would describe something you're selling when you're doing salam. Salam is defined separately than a normal business transaction, because a normal business transaction, there'll be an exchange of funds, right, and of goods right then and there. As opposed to salam, the goods are delivered later on. He says, وَلَا يَجِبُ ذِكْرُ الْقِيمَةِ. Now, if you're making a claim, the difference between salam and making a claim in court is that salam, you have to mention the price or the value, right? The monetary value of something. But if you're making a claim, you don't have to actually give a monetary value. Someone took a bike from me. It was a 10-speed bike. It was blue. It had decoration on it. You don't have to say, oh, I bought it for $100 or something like that. You don't have to do anything like that. فإن تلفت العين وهي متقومة وجب ذكر القيمة مع الجنس. But now, if you know that that person has damaged or destroyed the bike, someone took the bike from you, they were going to take it down the street, they left it, a car hit it, it broke into bits and pieces. In this scenario, you're not asking for your bike back. What are you asking for? The value. That you have to come with the value in that case. Now, if you went and you did not know that it was destroyed, when the qadi is speaking to the accused, did you take the bike? And he says yes, and he says, oh, but it was destroyed. Then the qadi can come back to you, the person making the claim, and say, well, how much was it worth? What's the value? Do you have evidence for the value? Okay, receipts, witnesses, etc. قال ذكر القيمة مع الجنس كعبد قيمته كذا وفي الدعوة بعقار. So that's that next paragraph, right? في الدعوة بعقار. عقار means real estate. Okay, in real estate, it's going to be a little bit different because real estate, you can't move it around, right? It stays put. So when you come, what do you need to mention when you're coming? He says, ذكر جهة ومحلة وحدود أربعة. You need to mention where it is, what city, state, county, etc. that it is, its street address, and the exact measurements, the dimensions of the property, تمام, or of the plot. فلا يكفي ذكر ثلاثة منها. You cannot only mention some of that information, some of the measurements, right? Maybe the side that's on the road, you know how long that is, and a little bit in, no, you have to mention all, because not all plots and properties are in a perfect, square, right? It might be a rectangle, might even be triangular. تمام. He says, إذا لم يعلم إلا بأربعة فإن علم بواحد منها كفى. If the property is something that's very, very narrow, or it is a perfect square, in these scenarios, at times, a qadi might say that's enough. Tamam? But only if you bring, like, مثلا, an image or the title where it has the actual county drawing out the property lines of the property and it looks like a square, so you just presented the two sides of it, or a rectangle. تمام. قال فإن علم بواحد منها كفى بل لو أغنت شهرته عن تحديده لم يجب. However, if the property is so well known, everyone knows what the issue is about, the qadi might actually just say, you don't need to present that much. خلاص, I know what you're referring to. But again, the qadi would be the one to make that call. قال وفي الدعوة بنكاح على امرأة ذكر صحته وشروطه. If there's a feud, did you get married or not? Did this actually take place or not? Right? You're going to need to mention everything that was involved in it. Things that we would need when we're looking at a marriage. What are the integrals? What makes a marriage? What is the contract about? What are the conditions in it? You need to present all of this information. You need to name the wali that you spoke to. You need to name the witnesses that were involved. You need to name if she agreed or not. كلام جميل. بأن كانت غير مجبرة فلا يكفي فيه الإطلاق. You need, when it's speaking about a marriage that people are claiming that did not happen, مثلا, you need to prove every single detail. فإن كانت الزوجة أمة وجب ذكر العجز عن مهر حرة وخوف العنة وأنه ليس تحته حرة. If the individual who was marrying a slave girl, مثلا, right, back in the day, right, and he's free, he's not a slave, well, you're going to need to explain further, because it's not that normal for that to take place. So why did a free man marry a slave girl? These are questions that a qadi will need to know if there's a claim being made. تمام. قال وفي الدعوة بعقد مالي. And that's probably what the most of our concerns would be surrounding, and that is a claim of your basic business transaction, gifts, salam, etc. He says كبيع, that's a transaction. And when he says bay'a here, bear in mind, he means all types of biyu'a, meaning a buyer, a seller, a money being exchanged, something with a monetary value being exchanged between them. That would include other details, indirect details, right? Such as salam. But when he uses bay'a here, it means in the general sense. قال وهبة. Hiba is similar to giving a gift to someone. Because you could give someone something, you didn't mean it as a gift, you meant it for them to borrow it, and they assume that it's a gift, and there, right there, you have a feud. You have a discussion that would require a qadi. He says, ذكر صحته ولا يحتاج إلى تفصيل كما في النكاح. نعم, if you noticed, when we spoke about a general item being taken, very basic, right? Just know the basics, the overall description, similar to what you would do in salam. Pretty basic, pretty easy. Spoke about real estate. You want to bring the plot, the title, the deed of the land. Very basic, right? But when he spoke about nikah, there's a lot more details required. Why? Because it has to do with family lines, right? Bloodlines, the families, etc. Now, when we're speaking about average things, the average problems that happen between two people on a regular basis, you don't need as much. Kalam Jamil. And he's telling you, he's saying, it's not, you don't need as much as you would need for nikah, because in nikah you're acting out of caution. In here, while there is always a level of caution, it's not that severe. He says وَتَلْغُ الدَّعْوَى بِتَنَاقُدٍ فَلَا يُطْلَبُ مِنَ الْمُدَّعَى عَلَيْهِ جَوَابُهَا. This is something very important. This is something that we see in feuds and debates and arguments on a regular basis. A person will accuse another person of something, regardless of what that is. The person being accused, right, he will say, by Allah, this did not happen. The person accusing will say, no, I don't want that. I want him to say, by Allah, I did not say or do or act or take kada. He doesn't get the right to ask that, right? Now, the qadi will come and tell him, no, bring a witness first. If a witness can corroborate the claim, then we'll entertain it. Then we'll seek more. But if you bring a witness and the witness does not actually corroborate the story, then you can't really do anything with that. And I shared a debate in the room. I think some of you listened to it. You'll see that the brother accusing, right, he said, Fulan said this. Fulan said, Aqsum billah, by Allah, I did not say this. So the brother accusing, he brought a witness. The witness said, I never said that. I never heard that. He said, okay, we'll solve this right now. Have the accused say, by Allah, I don't believe this. He can't go that. He has no right anymore. That's it. The discussion has ended. Tamam? So the mudda'a alayhi, the one being accused, if the premise cannot be presented accurately, you cannot request anything from them. You cannot say a word to them. Khalas. Done. He says, كَشَهَادَةٍ خَالَفَتْ الدَّعْوَةِ. Like a witness saying what? He's saying, no, I didn't hear that. I did not see this. Khalas. It's over. The accuser, he has nothing to proceed with unless he brings more witnesses or some other form of evidence. Here's a question. It says, what if there is a shubha and really that's the only way to prove his innocence? When you say shubha, right, it needs to be a proper shubha, meaning there's a legitimate concern. There's a major problem. In that debate that I shared with everyone, there really was no problem. It was really, to be honest, what was being said was a misunderstanding between the two. But when you say shubha, Shaykh Abdullah, do you have an example?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
What I mean is that the accuser raised enough suspicion although without bringing any concrete proof, but raise enough suspicion through somehow different means.
Perfect.
You know what I?
Mumtaz.
No.
That would not be enough.
Okay.
That would not be enough because that opens up the doors for conspiracy theories, right? And then developing reputations and stories about people that have no substance. Now, when I use the term conspiracy theory, I wanted you to put like a little footnote there. Yeah, and when we're speaking about government plottings and stuff like that, there's a lot of that stuff that turns out to be real. So I'm not speaking about that. I'm speaking about claiming that individuals in the community, another brother, yani, that there's some shady things taking place. That claim should not be made unless there are solid proofs. And in the debate, for example, and I'm using that as a point of reference because that's something where you got to hear or witness a proper يعني مدعي and مدعى عليه setting. It's really hard to get those kind of settings and see those settings. But when we see what he was saying, the more I asked the accuser, the more he kept on saying, well, maybe not 100%. I might have heard it wrong. So what is happening there is that he had some misconception in his mind, right, about something. And also, the one being accused is known for certain affiliations with people that are accused of similar things. However, with that being said, I know a lot of people that are affiliated with them that do not uphold that same opinion. And just for a side note, Ahbash. I know a lot of Ahbash that do not uphold a lot of the things that the Ahbash are known for. Abu Musa, the brother in that debate and argument, as a matter of fact, I know for a fact that he doesn't say the things that he was being accused of, because the brother, he participates in Shafi'i Fiqh a lot. We've had many discussions in the madhab. We have many arguments with each other on issues in the madhab. We've differed with things on what certain things meant in the madhab. And one thing that I witnessed, Karam Jameel, and it's kind of the reason that I was involved in the first place, is that I know both of the brothers. Abu Musa, while he might have affiliation with them, when I say, well, hold on, the madhab says this, we open up the book together, we read it together, he says, oh, astaghfirullah, yep, that's wrong, what the madhab says is right. That's why I was involved in that discussion right there. But can you say, for example, because this connects back, that's why I'm giving you everyone this background history. Can you say, but well, the person's affiliation, shouldn't that be enough? Not necessarily, right? And that's a big problem today. A lot of these groups and organizations and ideologies and agendas, your problem with them is that there's large groups of people involved or affiliated that don't actually believe the same things being promoted by that group and ideology. And therefore, putting a blanket thing over it is just not going to work. Take, for example, Al-Ikhwan. You know, when I was younger, I always assumed that the Ikhwan all were the same way. And as I got older and I started meeting Ikhwan from Yemen, from Sham, as a matter of fact, forget about the word Sham, Ikhwan from Lebanon and Ikhwan from Jordan and Ikhwan from Syria, I realized it's just a blanket concept and there are so many different ideologies within. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something very interesting. I studied with a Hanafi scholar. He was from Lebanon. Okay, he was Ikhwan. I studied with him an explanation he was doing on Jawharat al-Tawheed. Beautiful. Anything that I knew that the Ikhwan in Egypt contradict the Asha'ira in, he was refuting. The whole entire time. So it becomes a problem. These modern day groups are just, it's not like in the old days. You have one group and then 6 people from the group will split off and make their own individual groups and they'll be known after those people and everyone's fun. It's not like that anymore. It's more of, oh, the Ikhwan are trying to bring back the Khilafah. Oh, this is so cool. I want to be with them. And that's pretty much the extent of the person's involvement. Same thing with Hizb al-Tahrir. Same thing with Al-Ahbash. Same thing with every other group of the hundreds of groups that are out there. Of course, affiliating yourself with these groups is dangerous because it comes with a lot of baggage that you just don't want to deal with, especially if the people that you entered that group with, if they're not on a scholarly level. Like you could never hold the Ikhwan, for example, in Syria, Jordan, and Yemen by the same standards that you would hold the Ikhwan in Egypt. The Ikhwan in Egypt are laymen. The Ikhwan in Syria and Yemen are scholars. So you're looking at completely two different intellectual backgrounds, right? You're not going to see the Ikhwan in Syria or Yemen contradicting Ahkam al-Shara, while you might see that easily in Egypt, like with Al-Ikhwan al-Masihiyin, a subgroup of the Ikhwan Muslimin in Egypt. You don't see, you're not going to see that in Syria. You're not going to see that in Yemen, and that's the whole issue. It's more of a blanket concept. I cannot take the affiliation as a problem, right, and hold it against the individual. Hopefully that makes sense. I was trying to give all of these details in because if you're involved in brothers feuding, this is going to come to the table. Whether it's Wahhabis and their subcategories, or Ikhwan and their subcategories, or Tabligh and theirs, and this and that. It's a mess. But at the end of the day, you cannot judge the group ideology to the individuals that are claimed to be part of. Here's a question that says, suppose a person is asked about a person who is a potential business partner or employee for the asker. Mumtaz. This is not really court related per se. This would go under times where you can speak ill of people if needed. From it is like marriage. Other would be amana and wadi'a. That would come. That would be a lawful spot where you have to present the facts that you have. But that's not a court issue. We're focusing mostly here on court issues. That issue would fall under. It might go under a little bit shahadat and things like that, slightly. But it goes back to like what Imam al-Nawawi says, where ghiba is allowed. And that would fall under that, inshallah ta'ala. Now, anyway, moving forward here, he says, كان ادعى ملكا بسبب فذكر الشاهد سببا آخر فلا تسمع لمنافاتها الدعوى. نعم. As a matter of fact, let me explain that real quick. He's saying that if the person claimed, I own this property and it happened this way, he brings a witness and the witness says, well, wait a minute. No, that's not how it happened. It happened a completely different way. That's it. Done. The accuser cannot continue. Done. It's closed. It's over. Tamam. And that's very important to understand. If the witness comes and he starts speaking something that basically negates what the accuser is claiming, kalam jameel, that's it. The case is closed for now. قال وقضيته أنه لو أعادها على وفق الدعوة قبلت وبه صرح الحضرمي واختاره كلام غيره. نعم. So some of them said, if the person were to come back and bring that same witness, say he clarified the case to the witness, and the witness came back and said, oh, I had a misunderstanding, it could be accepted. Okay, it could be. But they'll frown upon that greatly because they want to see, okay, well, what made the witness change his opinion? Was he influenced? Tamam? That's a problem. And we're going to be seeing that in the next session when we speak about what kind of connections can the witnesses have with the accused and the accuser. What kind of connections can the judge have with the people in the community as well? Tamam? He says, وَلَا تَبْطُلُ الدَّعْوَى بِقَوْلِهِ شُهُودِي فَسَقَةٌ أَوْ مُبْطِلُونَ فَلَهُ إِقَامَةُ بَيَنَةٍ أُخْرَى وَالْحَلِفِ. Now, this is something that pertains to our modern day issues, right? If the individual bringing witnesses comes and says, I have to say, in all honesty, my witnesses are not at the highest standards that witnesses are, they should be, we're not going to automatically reject them, even though, as you'll come to see when we speak about qada, the witness, they need to be at a certain standard. If they're not, does that mean we reject their testimony altogether? No. Okay, but we won't base the case off of them alone. Which brings me to another point that's very important. DNA, video recordings, audio recordings. What is their status? We're going to be speaking about this more in when we speak about bayinat, inshallah ta'ala. But when it comes to these things, they can never be taken as primary evidence. And with very tight conditions and regulations, they might be accepted as secondary. Kalam Jameel. Why? Audio can be tampered with, video can be changed, right? And documents can be forged, and even DNA can be wrong, and it's been wrong in many, many cases. Most recent one that I saw, for example, I think I mentioned this before, was the case in Louisiana. The guy was in prison for, I don't know, 20, 30 something years, and they made a mistake in the DNA. Well, if they made a mistake like this, and that's a criminal charge, this is, they're supposed to be very thorough, right? It's called forensics. This is a major thing. It's not a game. It's not a joke. It's serious. And they made a mistake. Well, how many family relations were based on things like that, and we assumed that they were okay? That's something to think about. So in the Shafi'i school, those things are not suffice. They'll never be considered as primary evidence. Secondary with a lot of restrictions. Check, double check, triple checked. The video has been analyzed that it's not, it's not a green screen, it's not special effects were not added to it to change it, the sound wasn't tampered with, and there's ways to do this. You can bring experts to do this. Tamam? Naam. In our next segment right here, he's saying, وَمَنْ قَامَتْ عَلَيْهِ بَيِّنَةٌ بِحَقٍّ ليس له تحليف المدعي على استحقاق ما ادعاه بحق. If the accuser comes and he has his witnesses and everything adds up, the claim is sound. That's it. You cannot ask the accuser for more, because the condition is that the accuser comes, makes his claim, states the details that we need them to state, and then they bring their evidence, which is primarily your witnesses. Tamam? If they do that, that's it. Nothing else is required from them. قال لأنه تكليف حجة بعد حجة فهو كالطعن في الشهود. That would be saying that basically the witnesses are liars. On what grounds? He says نعم له تحليف المدين مع البينة بإعساره لجواز أن له مالا باطنا. نعم. If the person that is seeking a repayment, his money back, كلام جميل, he loaned money and he wants the money back. تمام? And he is pressuring the court to get his money back because he's saying that he's going through hard time. The judge might ask him to take an oath. By Allah, I'm going through a hard time and I need my money back. Tamam? Why? Because he might have other money and he just wants his money back, and it's not that urgent. Because when you give a loan, you have to keep in mind, there's an expectation, right, that you don't need that money. That's why you gave it out as a loan. Tamam. Now, of course, the scenario that he's speaking about here, it's before its due date or before the agreed date. Tamam. قال ولو ادعى خصمه مسقطا له كأداء له أو إبراء منه أو شرائه منه فيحلف على نفي ما ادعاه الخصم لاحتمال ما يدعيه. So basically, he's saying there is a case where the qadi might ask him to do an additional oath. Like, for example, a person says, Fulan took something from me. Tamam. Witnesses come and say yes. The one being accused comes and says, wait a minute, I bought this. I gave him money. Tamam. Now, was he truthful in the claim? Did that person take it from him? Yes. Were the witnesses truthful that that person took an item from the accuser? Yes. But there was a fact that was not being presented, and that was there was an exchange. since they're not testifying about that aspect of it, here the Qadi can ask for more evidence to show that it was a sale. He could do that by asking for receipts, money that was received, or he can tell him to an yahlif, to take an oath. And when we get to the segment on iman, or afwan, not iman, ayman, taking an oath, we'll see the importance of that. A lot of people today, their word means nothing, so sadly it's not treated as it should be, but this is serious for a Muslim. Because when you add Allah's name into it, yani, if you're lying, you're damning yourself. He says, وكذا لو ادعى خصمه عليه علمه بفسق شاهده أو كذبه. نعم, if the one being accused, he presents evidence that the witnesses are lying, the judge might ask the person and the witnesses to take an oath. تمام. قال ولا يتوجه حلف على شاهد أو قاض ادعى كذبه قطعا لأنه يؤدي إلى فساد عام. نعم, we don't initially ask the judge to take an oath. We don't initially ask witnesses to take an oath, because once you start putting doubt on the process, the whole process collapses. So those kind of things that we want to avoid. There should be internal review systems, but we don't need to enforce a half by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on every occasion, every case. That's too much. قال ولو نكل عن هذه اليمين حلف المدعى عليه وبطلت الشهادة. نعم, نكول, this is a term, كلام جميل, that the fuqaha use a lot. And what nukul is refusing to give or to state an oath by Allah. Tamam. Why would a judge ever need to take an oath? Well, because someone might accuse the process, right? And people in moments of anger are like, no, the judge needs to take an oath right now. No, that's disrespecting the process. Kalam Jameel, we're not going to do that on a case-to-case basis. La. There can be an internal review system, right, where a committee can tell the judge, you need to take an oath, يعني, come once a month and take it, right? That you're going to follow the rules, be truthful, etc. That's fine. But for every case, for people to start questioning the process itself, this would cause the whole process to crumble. That's the whole problem. That's why courts have police in them, because people attack judges تمام, when they are angry. تمام. He says وإذا طلب الإمهال من قامت عليه البينة أمهله القاضي وجوبا. Now, regardless of what the case is and what the accusation is, if the accused there has been evidence that is enough evidence to hold them accountable, right, for the claim, and the accused asks for time, whether that time is to pay up, give back what they took, get their own witnesses, right, to do naqt, an appeal to what is being stated, they get that right. They still have that right that we give them that time. Tamam? And that's wajib, because they have a right as well. قال لكن بكفيل. However, it's going to be a form of probation. What do I mean by probation? Meaning there's going to be someone assigned to that individual, monitoring what's happening. What are they doing? Why do they need this time? Kalam Jameel. Just in case they flee or they're trying to forge something, etc. He says, وَإِلَّا فَبِالتَّرْسِيمِ عَلَيْهِ إِنْ خِيفَ هَرَبَهُ. Tarsim, tamam, it means that we might put him in a jail cell or take his driver's license and passport so he can't flee. Kalam Jameel, if there's a fear of that. And most of the things that we're talking about in our community-based issues, that shouldn't really be a problem. Although I was in a Q&A today in regards to marital issues, and someone literally said that it was a sister. She married someone from overseas. He came. It started not to working out. So she asked for a divorce, and he went MIA. So she's in limbo because of this behavior. So sometimes that does happen. Communities should have a way to monitor an individual so that way they don't leave if they're at fault. He says ثلاثة من الأيام ليأتي بدافع. So the judge is يعني what time is or what amount of time is he going to give the person that's being accused? He said 3 days. Why? So that way he can bring something that would يعني negate the accusation against him, right? من نحو أداء أو إبراء, or if it turned out that he owed something or he took something, he can bring it back or give it back because that solves the problem, right? He says ومكن من سفره ليحضره إن لم تزد المدة على 3 لأنها لا يعظم الضرر فيها. Now, if they need to travel to do something, they are allowed to travel to do something, but we're talking about like going to the next town over, going to another city, getting what might be evidence that would free them from the claim against them, وهكذا. The next segment, we're not actually going to do that one. We're not going to do that one. Next one is the fara'. It should be right here. He says, لا تسمع الدعوى بدين مؤجل إذا لم يتعلق بها إلزام ومطالبة في الحال. If someone gives someone else a loan and it's agreed upon that that loan is going to be paid in a year, and then the person who gave the loan, he changes it after a month and he wants his money back, we're not going to entertain that because there was already an agreement. So he cannot come and ask to change it. Now, there is one scenario that he could, and we already mentioned that, and that is he's running through troubled times. So he might go and ask the person, can you do it early because I'm having a problem? And then they can go to a qadi to solve the problem. And then the qadi can ask him, okay, well, can you take an oath that you're going through hard times? You're not going to be asked to show receipts, but take an oath so we know that you're truthful. So if we're going to put pressure on another Muslim, we have something, a cause for that, right? He says, now, if we're looking at a loan situation, we're looking for things that are due now. He says, وَيُسْمَعُ قَوْلُ الْبَائِعِ الْمَبِيعُ وَقْفٌ. If the seller who sold something to someone, and he comes and he says, oh, by the way, I sold you something that's an endowment. That's haram in Islam. You cannot sell an endowment. That bay' is batil. Kalam jameel. So if the seller tells the buyer this, and the buyer doesn't care, and then the seller decides to go to court on this, right? We don't even bother with what the buyer says, thinks, assumes. All of that is irrelevant. In that kind of scenario, we'd automatically void the transaction and take it from them. Why? Because in Islam you cannot sell an endowment. What's an endowment? It's like sadaqah jari. It's like building a masjid lillah. That can be sold. It's haram. It can, if something is put as waqf, it cannot be used for any other purposes. He says, وَكَذَا بَيِّنَةٍ إِن لَمْ يُصَرَّحْ حَالَ الْبَيْعِ بِمِلْكِهِ وَإِلَّا سَمَعَتْ دَعْوَاهُ لِتَحْلِيفِ الْمُشْتَرِي أَنَّهُ بَاعَهُ وَهُوَ مِلْكَهُ or مُلْكُهُ. If there's ever something like that when it comes to a sale, right, and the seller is bringing something that basically is taking money out of his pocket and giving back to the buyer, we will listen to the seller, not the buyer, okay? Because from its premise, the seller, right, is accusing himself of doing something wrong. He's taking money out of his own pocket. You know anyone in sales that does that? No. So that for us is high validity. Tamam? Next segment right here, we're going to be speaking about when a claim is turned out to be, it is sound. He says, وَإِذَا أَقَرَّ الْمُدَّعَ عَلَيْهِ ثَبَتَ الْحَقِّ. If the one accused testifies that that is true, then automatically the ruling and the accusation and the claim is what we're going to move forward on. Bila hukmin, the judge doesn't even need to open up his mouth. خلاص. He testified. He confessed. وإن سكت عن الجواب أمره القاضي به. Now, if the accused being presented with facts, there's nothing that we have to reject the claim, right? And the judge looks over at the accused and says, what say you? And he refuses to answer. No, the judge now will force him to. You need to make a statement. We need to hear. What do you have to say? قال وإن لم يسأل المدعي, even if the one placing the claim is not asking for the accused to say something, the judge needs to step up and get involved and make him hear from what he has to say for himself. فإن سكت فكمنكر فتعرض عليه اليمين. If the accused insists not to give an actual answer, right, then we will consider that as he's denying the claim, and we would ask him to take an oath. He says, فإن سكت أيضا ولم يظهر سببه فناكل فيحلف المدعي. If the accused insists on not to say a word, he doesn't want to take an oath, he doesn't have anything to say for himself, and there is no reason why, here in this scenario, we will say, go ahead and ask the accused to take an oath by Allah. Why? Because in these scenarios, and they mention this in the larger works, is that there could be a fear of intimidation, right? There could be fear of consequence. There could be some sort of pressure we're not aware of. Tamam? In these cases, they will say it would be best to take the accused into a private room and speak with them there. If you can't, then you would ask the accuser to take an oath. But the qadi will use his better judgment at that point. Tamam? He says, وَإِنْ أَنْكَرْ اشترط إنكار ما ادعي عليه وأجزائه إن تجزأ. وإن أنكر كلام جميل, meaning the one being accused, he denies the claim. كلام جميل. Then we cannot accept a general denial of the claim against them. No, you can't just say, oh no, I didn't do it. No, that's not going to work. You're going to need to give us details of every single thing that was mentioned against you, every issue brought against you. You need to deny every single one individually. Kalam Jameel. You can't just say, oh no, I didn't do it. Everything that they're saying is a lie. That's not enough. فإن ادعى عشرة مثلا لم يكفي في الجواب لا تلزمني العشرة. كلام جميل. So if, like, for example, he's accused of taking $10, we'll just use that as an example. He can't just come say, no, I don't have to do, no, there's no $10. That's not enough. That's not enough. Kalam Jameel, because our mashaykh used to use this, right? I want everyone, if you have a second, I want you to hold up fingers. Hold up fingers. Don't tell me what the fingers are. And I'm going to tell you exactly how many fingers you have up. You ready? Whatever you have up, right? It's less than 11. Am I truthful? I'm truthful. Because whatever fingers you have up, it has to be under 11 because you only have 10 fingers, right? So people will word their responses exactly like that. They'll be like, 10? I don't owe 10. 10 what? You owe 10 what? You owe 11? Right? Because that wouldn't be a lie at that point. So whatever they say, it needs to be very detailed. And FYI, that joke only works in English with fingers, but if you do it in Arabic, it has to be anything under 21. Kalam Jameel, because fingers in Arabic is asaba for both hands and feet. So if you're using it in Arabic, make sure you ask the person put up يعني ارفع أصابع وأنا أقول لك الرقم كم, right? And then you say under 21. But if you're doing it in English, you can only say under 11. Our Mashaykh would use that as an example because people would be like, okay, you're accused of taking $100 from this person. You have to give them 100. So he says, I don't owe him 100. Why is he saying that? Because maybe it wasn't actually 100. Maybe it was 99. Maybe it was 105, 101. Basically, it's not a lie. Maybe they're saying in their head, I don't owe him 100 Egyptian pounds. Yeah, you don't. You owe him $100. It's a different thing, right? So you need them to be precise. He says, no, they'll need to say, I don't owe 10, or even some of 10, or any of 10, or 1 through 10. It needs to be as detailed as can be. Very clear. No ifs and buts. And if it's dollars, then they need to say 10 US dollars. Kalam Jameel. And in some of the mutawalat, they'll say the qadi might need to ask things like, do you owe him 11? 1005? 1050? 950? 975? 995? Why? Just to make sure that they're not playing around with words. Because they could say, by Allah, I don't owe him $10. Yeah, because they owed him 11, right? So the qadi needs, if there's a denial of the accusation, he needs to get a very detailed answer from him. If he can't do that, then he's not satisfying the claim. He says, وَكَذَا يُحَلِّفْ. نعم يحلف. يعني he'll ask him afterwards to take an oath with his answer. إن توجهت اليمين عليه لأن مدعيها مدع لكل جزء منها فلا بد أن يطابق الإنكار واليمين دعوة. The denial and the oath need to match the claim exactly. فإن حلف على نفي العشرة واقتصر عليه فناكر عما دونها. If the person comes and says, by Allah, I do not owe this individual 10 US dollars. The judge then will come and say, give him $9 then. Why? Because he might owe him 9. He said 10. No, he'll need to say, I do not owe him any US dollars. Not 10, not less, not more. Something like that, where it's so evident and obvious and clear that there's no doubt. تمام؟ قال فيحلف المدعي على استحقاق ما دون العشرة ويأخذه. In order to solve that, right? After that oath, the judge can easily, because remember, we're talking about there's already evidence against him. Remember? There's already evidence. So the judge can come and say, okay, he'll tell the accuser, does he owe you less than 10? If the accuser says, yes, fine, then he'll have to pay him 9. لأن النكول عن اليمين كالإقرار. By them tampering with how they're saying it and refusing to say it correctly is a form, we look at it as a form of confession. Now the qadi will have to inform the person before taking an oath, before making their statement, you be very clear with what you're about to say. Because your statement of denial can actually flip against you. Imagine that. قال أو ادعى مالا مضافا لسبب أقرضتك كذا كفاه في الجواب لا تستحق أنت علي شيء أو لا يلزمني تسليم شيء إليك. نعم. What if instead of them saying يعني I gave you, it says no, I gave you a loan of كذا. The person responding can say, no, I don't owe you anything. I don't have to give you anything. There's يعني that type of answer would be suffice as a response, because the term أقرضتك, right, is indicating a loan, an assumption of receiving something, not necessarily of the amount. And then the response here is, I don't owe you anything. I don't have to give you anything back. That is saying that what they assumed as a loan that they would get back is now being rejected by saying, no, I don't owe you anything back. So they're not really focusing here on the amount, they're focusing on the initial claim, the premise of the claim from the beginning. قال ولو اعترف به وادعى مسقطا طولب بالبينة. يعني if a person says, yes, I took that, yes, I received that from him, but I don't need to return it, then he's going to be asked for evidence to be presented. He'll have to present that evidence. Tamam? Here's our last segment for the evening, and this will end our segment. Now, I know if you're holding the book and looking, there's still things about shahada. We're going to be doing that with qada, inshallah ta'ala. So here he says, وَلَوْ ادَّعَى عَلَيْهِ وَدِيعَةً فَلَا يَكْفِي في الجواب لا يلزمني التسليم. A wadi'a is like when you leave an amana with someone. So for example, say you're going out of the country and your car, it rusts. So in order to avoid it sitting while you're out of the country, I go give the keys to Sheikh Abdullah. Say, Sheikh Abdullah, can you take my car out once a week? Just drive it around the block. It rusts inside if I don't use it on a regular basis. I get back and I'm saying, oh, Sheikh Abdullah, can I have my car back? And he's like, لا يلزمني التسليم. Or he says, لا تستحق علي شيء. I don't owe you anything. كلام جميل. All right. Then what are we going to do? It says, ويحلف كما أجاب ليطابق الحلف الجواب. يعني he'll need to do what? He'll need to take an oath that matches what the claim of the wadi'a is. تمام؟ قال ولو ادعى عليه مالا فأنكر وطلب منه اليمين فقال لا أحلف وأعطي المال لم يلزمه قبوله من غير إقرار وله تحليفه. نعم, if a person claims that another person has money that belongs to him, the accused says no, that's not true. So then we ask him, can you take an oath by Allah that that's not true? And he says, no, I will not take an oath, and I will give them the money that they're asking for. Tamam? The judge can actually stop that from happening and say, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. Why? Because I don't know why you're giving your money if you don't believe that you owe anything. Why would you be giving your money? Are you confessing that you owe them that? He says, no, I'm not confessing. Then we're going to stop this whole process and we're going to have to dig a little bit. We're going to have to investigate here. And we're going to ask, we're going to force both sides now to take an oath because something odd is happening, right? No one will just go and give money for no reason, right? There has to be a legitimate reason for this. Tamam? Right. Now, why are we stopping here? Because the next segment is packed heavily with yameen. These scenarios that you see here all the way until you get to ash-shahadat is actually mostly about yameen and nukul. We'll be covering some of them while we're doing the amen segment, okay? Because a lot of it you might not understand without some of the details that are involved with amen. The next fasl in Da'wah al-Bayinat that is connected to the shahadat and it's connected to qada, kalam jameel. So we're going to use that in qada because there's certain rules that are required for that you need to know when you're trying to utilize witnesses, but it's connected to the court system, meaning how the court system actually functions. So it's better we keep it with that, inshallah ta'ala. This brings us to the end of the 3 sessions for ad-da'wah wal bayinat. In it, we learned a little bit about claims. We learned about different aspects and elements of claims. I will be sharing over the next week, inshallah ta'ala, little study guides, breakdowns to some of these scenarios, what we covered, in a small little PDF file, inshallah ta'ala. I'll make it in Arabic. I'll add some translation in it, inshallah ta'ala. Maybe not completely, but especially like terminologies, basic scenarios, and that we've covered here, inshallah ta'ala. after the next two sessions, meaning we have another set of sessions on qada, and then another couple of weeks after that, we'll have another group of sessions on al-ayman. When we're done, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, each one of you will get a certificate of completion of ahkam al-qada wal-da'wa wal-bayinat and shahada and ayman bi-idhnillah, that you've completed a course on that in accordance with the Shafi'i school. After each set of sessions, like I'll be doing this coming week, you'll receive a PDF where it covers the main scenarios I went over, terminology used, the basic concepts that we covered, inshallah ta'ala, where you can use in the future when you are trying to establish these things in your communities. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns? And if you want to take notes in your books, why isn't it doing it? Oh, well, yeah, just do this. Let's bring this guy. This, wrong thing, sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I did have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
It's in relationship to what you mentioned earlier about people that have been affiliated with certain groups like the Ahbash and other groups,
No.
and they don't hold the same positions, like certain positions of those groups. They may hold some core beliefs, but not, certain, the extreme positions, let's
No.
say, of those groups. And the reason why I'm asking the question is because it kind of applies to me, personally. Because when I was younger, I studied from the Ahbash, and but as I matured, I realized that a lot of their positions, that you couldn't function in the world with their positions. And so, and as I grew older and began to study in with other shuyukh, um, I found myself, not disagreeing with them. But at the same time, they do hold certain positions that are in accordance with the school and with the Sharia, and even
That's
some
true.
with the right. So yeah, I was just saying. So, have you found the same thing?
Well, basically very similar to what you're referring to, Yani. When I was younger, I always, oh, that's from this person's from that group, then automatically there's a list of these ideas that are attributed to that group, some of which are valid, some are, Yani, valid, meaning the accusation is true, and some that are not. Some are misunderstood concepts and things like that. Yani, at the end of the day, every individual is different, regardless of affiliation, and that's the way that I approach everything. I never try to boycott anyone, except for maybe sometimes brothers from Hizb ut-Tahrir. They're a little bit too much to handle. I mean, some of these brothers, they'll tell you things like, we have the generals of all of the armies in the Middle East and we're ready to reestablish the Khilafah. I'm like, Akhi al-Habib, who's telling you this nonsense? Who? Billah alayk, who is telling you this? Because
No.
that's L. Ron Hubbard level type of insanity. But yani, we cannot claim every individual in every group holds the positions of the group or this group or that group that is claimed to them. Now, regardless of this group, if they're Ash'ari, if they're Shafi'i, because the Ahbash are supposed to be Shafi'i and Ash'ari, kalam jameel, but you have a lot of issues where they'll use statements that go against the Mu'tamad in the Shafi'i school when it comes to the Mujassima. Okay, because there's, for example, when we look at Tajsim, there's Tajsimun Sirf, those are kuffar, there's no debate there. And then there's those people that lazim qawlahum Tajsimun Sirf. They're not Mujassima, but what they're saying, if we were to complete their train of thought, if you may, then that's Tajsim. It's the byproduct of their claim. But you have to understand something, that the scholars agreed that lazim al-madhab laysa bi-madhab, meaning the understood byproduct of a statement is not by default what the individual making the original statement means by their statement. Therefore, we don't hold them accountable to what we could understand from the statement that they made, only by the statement that they made. So when they're speaking on the issue of tajsim, usually what happens is that they'll mention it and not clarify and not cover this point. And therefore, you walk away, well, I have now an understanding that every Wahhabi on the face of the planet is a kafir murtad. That's wrong. We don't say that. That's not a correct understanding. Kalam Jameel. As a matter of fact,
No.
how about this? Most of the students of knowledge of the Wahhabiyya are munazzaha and they don't even know about it. Yeah, that's actually the reality. I remember I was in a gathering with some of the Wahhabiyya in Egypt. And I tried to be as basic as possible. And I said, does God have a hand as a tool that he uses? He said, Astaghfirullah al-Azim. La, 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 la. We only say yad because we see the term yad. I was like, okay, then you're all Ash'ari. They were like, Astaghfirullah al-Azim, we're not Ash'ari. You just did tafweed.
No.
You just did
No.
tafweed. You know, that's the problem that you're dealing with, right? But yes, if we dig into certain individuals, their statements like Muhammad Khalil Harras, who says that God's hand is a tool, he uses it to do things, and if he has a hand and he has an arm, which is a fabricated hadith, but he went with it anyway, then he must have a wrist. Yeah, someone like that, I mean, if he was alive, we would have major issues with. He already passed, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive him. But using these types of open-ended statements in front of the awam is the same exact thing we are criticizing the Wahhabiyya for, right? They're mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mentioning sifat, right? And leaving open-ended statements. And then the awam, that's like giving a child a picture with dots and telling him, okay, don't connect the dots. What are you doing? What are you doing? Because if we keep on that behavior, and this is what we're telling the Wahhabis, stop doing this. Because if we leave this in 100 years, they're going to be asking you, what colors do we use? It's not going to be dots anymore. The image will be there. That's what happened to Christians, right? That was literally the same exact thing that happened. Why are we repeating it? So these brothers can't come and do the exact thing that we're warning against in another topic. I mean, that's just confusing at this point. Stop. And it's not, yes, they're Ash'ari. Inshallah, many of them are upon the Sunnah, okay? And a lot of them, as I mentioned, like Abu Musa that was in that debate, he was actually, I've always found him to be very honest. If we're speaking about creed and we're speaking about the position of the Ash'ari, if I tell, what you said here was wrong. He said, really? My sheikh must have made a mistake. Where's the book? Do you have a reference? Let's review it. And he knows that I'm not okay with the Ahbash. I'm not okay with a lot of their behaviors, a lot of their beliefs. He knows that. But if he's available and I'm available, right, he'll bring me in to speak. Kalam Jameel. And I'll bring him in to speak because at the end of the day, I know this individual as a Muslim, as a student of knowledge. He upholds the mu'tamad of the Shafi'i and the mu'tamad of the Ash'ari. Jazahullah khair. That's what we're seeking at the end of the day, right? Allahu a'lam.
No.
Here's a question right here. Let me see. This text has a lot of information, but it feels like the text is very condensed. Yes, it is. You know why? Because this author is a student of Ibn Hajar al-Haytami. And Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, right, is a Hajar. So yes, it is a heavily packed book. It definitely is. Naam. Yes, but I will have to say this. Yeah, I know it's hard and it's format and it's wording. Yes, but that's the beauty of it. Kalam Jameel, that's the beauty of it. Tamam. Is there a reason why the author's style is like this? Naam, because he wrote it was something that he was teaching on a regular basis. What would be a good book on rulings of chapter of Qada? There are many books that have been written on the topic of Qada, like actual books. Adab al-Qada by Shaykh al-Islam Zakir al-Ansari would probably be a great place to start with. It's a sharh that he did on al-Ghazi's book on Qada. I wouldn't go to another matn. Stick with one matn so you don't lose track. Kalam Jameel. If you're in the Iqna' class, you'll get a whole lot more clarification when we cover this chapter there. inshallah ta'ala. I wouldn't suggest going to another method. If you want to go to Sheikh Musa's translation to see the terminology, it's definitely helpful, but don't take it as a study a book. نعم. I see what you mean. نعم. طيب يا اخوان, we're going to end here inshallah ta'ala, and I'll see everyone in our next sessions. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله تعالى لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. And you can always find me on Telegram for any questions that might come up. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.